Doctors, do you know why patients are leaving your practice? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the KC CHIROpulse Podcast, brought to you by CATS Consultants and Chiro Health USA. We are your hosts. This is Dr. Troy Fox. I'm Dr. Michael Perusich. We appreciate you joining in today. And Troy, we were talking about this a little bit here in the studio before we went live, and the top 5 patient complaints that are driving patients out of our practices, and we don't even realize it. We just think, oh, well, it's the typical patient. They don't follow all the way through care. But there's a way to fix these things if we just recognize them and kind of lean into them a little bit. And I'm just going to dive right into the first one, because this is one of my favorites, actually. This is a silent killer of case acceptance. Patient says, I don't really understand what's going on. Now, whose fault is that?
Right.
Yeah, doctors, come on. You got to give at least a good enough report of findings that your patients understand the recommendations for care. They have to understand why they're getting an adjustment. They have to understand why they're getting muscle stim. They have to understand why they're getting shockwave and, whatever is built into your treatment plan. If they don't understand it, you're going to be lucky if all they do is want to play a la carte with your treatment plan. But my gosh, if they say, I don't really understand what's going on, and they leave because of that, that's on you, docs.
That is a serious lack of either spending the time with the patient or taking the effort to help them understand. I hear an awful lot of, you got a joint out of place, or, even chiropractors talk about popping joints. And I'm like, specific adjustments, people. That's what you learned in school. But when we talk to that patient about that specific adjustment and we're looking at what's going on with the patient, we have to somehow relay a very technical explanation. Not so much water it down. I don't like to water down my explanation to a patient. What I like to do is relate it with stories. If you're talking about a disc injury, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, take a water balloon, fill it with Jello, put a mesh turkey bag around it, and glue it to your hands. Boom. That's the explanation of a disc. That's a healthy disc. And now let's talk about what's happened with you. So there's a really quick, easy way. I just explained a disc, which for most of us, if we tried to get into the technical portion, and yes, I left out the nucleus, but don't worry about that because it's really not important to the patient at that point. That's not where we're heading with it. So I can leave that part out, or I can say, hey, I know you're a technical guy. There is a nucleus in there too, but we don't need to worry about that right now because what we're really going to talk about is that mesh turkey bag, the angular fibers. That's what I want to talk about today. So when you're talking to a patient, it's really easy if you can relate to them. Now, it's also easy if you can add, and this is a big one, and this is one that you're really big on as well, that's that emotional connection to the outcome. In other words, what is your goal for care? What can't you do right now? Really easy question.
If you're presenting your care plan to the patient in a format that sounds to the patient like it's your plan, like you've designed this for your clinic to make money, you're going to lose every time. You've got to tie it all back to the patient. And you guys are going to throw sticks and stones at me when I say this, but I'm telling you, it's the truth. If you're spending 10, 15, 20 minutes trying to explain the chiropractic adjustment, you've lost the patient. Don't throw sticks and stones, because I'm not saying the chiropractic adjustment isn't powerful, but the patient isn't in your office to learn about the physiology, the neurophysiology behind a chiropractic adjustment. They want to know, can you get me back to doing whatever it is they can't do right now? That's what they want to know. That's what they're relying on you for.
And when that is presented to the patient, how are we going to get you back to where you want to be? An example, I can't play with my grandkids. I can't get down on the ground because my low back hurts.
I'll try.
Yeah. So when we're talking about that, relates right back to your report of findings. You can very specifically go back to your report of findings and then present a care plan.
Yep.
Because now we're not just talking about just pain. We're talking about pain. We're talking about function and long-term outcome. So when I do that, what is the first thing I say? Let's get you out of pain first. but
Yeah.
here's how we're going to do that. And then we start talking about the treatment plan itself. So we validate our treatment plan based off of what does this patient want to achieve? What do they want to get out of this? I had a
Yep.
guy in just about half an hour ago that is 50 some years old, but still rides motorcycles and not like on the
Sweet.
road. He does enduro stuff. And I
Sweet.
said, my first question was, what is this keeping you from doing? He said, he smiles and he said, well, he said, you're not going to believe this, but I'm 50 some years old and I still ride enduro bikes because my son
Yeah.
wants to ride enduro bikes. And I started riding with him. And I went, really? Tell me a little bit more about that and what you guys do. And I said, what's this keeping you from doing right now? And that led right into, okay, here's my plan. Here's what we need to do. And it allows me at the same time to talk about what we need to do long-term care wise. You're going to continue to do
Exactly.
the things that you're doing right now. So you're going to continue to put yourself in harm's way, right? So how do we mitigate that? We mitigate that with a cadence of care after we get you better. But let's worry about getting you better first. I just planted the seed.
Yeah. And that's the perfect way to present a care plan because it's not
Mhm.
about pain. It's about being able to ride that motorcycle, not only for the next month, but the next 6 months, the next 6 years,
Yep.
maybe the next 20 years. And that doesn't, that means chiropractic care doesn't really have an endpoint to it.
And I didn't start with pain. I started
Right.
with long-term care and looped back around to pain.
Yep.
You notice that at the very end, I said, let's get you out of pain first.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the first part of the treatment plan,
Yeah.
not the end of the treatment plan. So we
Right.
can't let patients walk away not understanding what's going on. So if your report of findings, for example, is weak, this is going to be a symptom of it. I don't understand what's going on, doc. I don't know why we're doing all this stuff. If you have low conversion rates, high dropouts, those kind of things, this is probably what's happening behind the scenes. So we've got 4 more great examples of why patients are walking away from your clinic. So hang in there.
Mhm.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Affordable care shouldn't mean undervaluing yourself, but most chiropractors are still undercharging, especially when it comes to insurance allowances and cash patients with limited coverage. Chiro Health USA helps chiropractors charge appropriately, get paid well when insurance is available, and still serve patients with no or limited benefits, all through a compliant discount medical plan. The result? Doctors stop undercharging, raise fees, and increase income by about 20% without sacrificing care. That's not a discount strategy, it's a business strategy. Learn more at chirohealthusa.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We are talking about the 5 things, the 5 excuses, the 5 complaints, put it that way, that patients throw out, the top 5 that patients throw out to quit care and walk away from your practice. And we all are experiencing a lot of these. You know, number 2, Troy, is this is more expensive than I expected.
It is. And here's what's funny about that. When I first started into practice, I thought, oh, it's even though they drove up in a brand new vehicle, they had brand new clothes on. They're talking about the trip they took to Maui last week. Oh my gosh, this is more expensive than I expected. I don't know if I can afford this kind of thing. They don't say that to you, but they'll tell the front desk that.
Sure.
You know what the problem really was? Again, it goes back to point number 1 of a good report of findings. They don't see a value in what I'm getting ready to do.
Yeah.
And so if they don't see a value, they don't want to follow through. So
Yep.
it's about value perception rather than it is about the money. In other words, I have somewhere disengaged with the patient at this point, or we wouldn't be having this conversation about the money.
And let's take your motorcycle guy as an example. We can just carry that into this complaint. If your motorcycle guy believes that he's only there to get out of pain, I'm sorry, we're kind of magicians when it comes to getting people out of pain most of the time.
Yeah.
You're going to lose them really, really quick. And I'm going to ask you guys out there, is that the point where the patient is well enough to go out to do ride the motorcycle? Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second.
Mhm.
No, it's not. You know, there is orthopedic research out there. I think this was in spine. Don't quote me on that, many years ago, but it talks about the fact that it takes 18 months for spinal joints, spinal mechanisms, as they call it in the orthopedic research. So that's the muscles, the bones, the disc, the nerves, all that. It's the complex. It takes 18 months for that to fully heal. And that's only if you do everything right. And are your patients doing everything right? No, the motorcycle guy's out there jumping off of 20-foot high hills. And what happens when he lands? Think about Wolff's Law. Abnormal pressure on normal tissue causes it to what? Plastically deform. And so it's because of all the things that people do every day, all of us do every day on a daily basis, that our patients aren't getting that 18-month healing time. And if you're telling them you've got a 6-week treatment plan and then they're going to be cut loose, whoa, did you fall short? In my opinion, yeah. So we don't want to create patients who think care is expensive. Care is necessary. And go get your gallbladder taken out. If you have a gallbladder issue, it hurts, but the doctor's not correcting the pain. He's taking something out of you that hurts, but he's correcting the problem. And that's what we have to help our patients understand. And it's in there that the value proposition exists. And it's in that emotional goal. Like we talked about, number one, it's that motorcycle guy who wants to continue riding with his son, but he's going out and repetitively causing insult to the spine by doing that. He needs chiropractic for the rest of his life.
And it's amazing when you present it the right way, how well it works, because sometimes we think, well, I can't do that. Let me tell you, this gentleman was the CFO at a hospital.
Oh, nice.
And this gentleman understands value for care, but he also understands that there needs to be some sort of tie-in to, okay, here's what I got going on. Here's what I'm looking at. And here's why we can continue, rather than just saying it. So we have to have a good understanding ourselves of why patients are getting long-term care. And I think sometimes we tend to not even look at the research, like the research piece that you referenced. And I've referenced that with patients as well. And they're like, whoa, it takes that long to get better.
Yeah.
You may not feel pain that long, but it takes that long for your body to completely heal. And how many of us have waited 18 months to resume activities? None of us.
None.
I mean, if you're a golfer, most of you guys that play golf or gals, I'm lucky if I can get you to set out for 2 weeks.
Right.
Much less.
Good luck.
18 months. Yeah.
Right.
And any other sport really too. Most people are not willing to sit out for very long. 2 weeks seems like a lifetime.
An eternity. Yeah, it does.
You're there as a supportive role from that standpoint. So it's really easy to explain. I'm here in a supportive role. Your body's going to continue to remodel over this time, but left alone to its own devices, it's going to go back right where it was. You're going to be in the same position, and now you're vulnerable to a much larger injury down the road. And
go ahead.
Here's what's crazy about that. If you look at documentation and you look at documentation rule, what are the documentation rules say? They say that we need to counsel our patients on adverse responses if they don't follow our care recommendations.
Yep.
Are you guys aware of that? I mean, if you're not aware of that, be aware, because you are supposed to counsel your patients if they say, Doc, I don't know if I want to do that. Well, here are the bad things that can happen. You don't have to say it quite like that. But I just said that when I told the patient that, and that goes in my notes.
And I always framed that very thing around an analogy that everybody understands, and that's braces on your teeth. And ironically, I think the average length of time for braces is, guess what? 18 months. And if you take them off early, guess what will happen to the teeth? They'll go right back to the snaggly tooth positions they were in previously. And when you get done with the 18 months and they take all the bands and braces off,
snaggly tooth,
and they take the braces off, are you done? No, it's the wellness phase. It's the maintenance phase. They put the retainer on, whether it's one you sleep in at night or a permanent retainer on the backside of your teeth. The process is still ongoing. It's still
and the goal is to wear the retainer so you don't end up in braces again, because if you go backwards far enough, now we have to go through this process again, or at least a portion thereof. Guess what that sounds like? It sounds like chiropractic care.
Exactly. It's just how the human body works. Don't let your patients not understand the value of chiropractic care. In my opinion, I know you'll agree with me on this, Troy. in my opinion, chiropractic is the jewel of value in all of healthcare. My gosh, we do something nobody else does, number one. And number two, we're also the least expensive. So why would anybody ever think it's too expensive?
And
That's
make
because
sure
we let them.
when you get to that point, that your patient's already now. So rather than trying to establish value by showing how cheap your prices are, establish value through your report of findings and then present the patient at the front because especially if they're a cash patient, right? You have to present that plan. You have to show them this is how much it's going to cost. That's another legal requirement that you have when you're working with patients. So let's do it the right way. But if you don't want to rely on that as a crutch to be what explains to your patient how it's a value, that doesn't explain that it's a value. That just tells me how much it costs. And I want to know that, but I want to understand in advance. Because here's what you hear when you go to someone and you're getting ready to get something done and they explain it well and you're all about it. Like, let's go buy a new phone. I'm all excited about a new phone. I go in and they're like, man, this thing does everything. It'll slice your bread and butter it. I'm like, sweet. And then we get to the
Must
price
be an
and they
Android.
go, yeah, it is. And so we get to the price and they tell me, well, that's going to be $1,089 or we can put this in payments and blah, blah. And now they're actually telling me what it really costs. What am I saying at that point? Yeah. Let's go ahead and do it. Yeah, put it on that payment plan thing. Let's get going. I want that phone in my hand.
Yeah.
So they
When
have
will all my
already
stuff transfer
established
over?
you've established value.
Yeah, you established
Good point
value.
with that.
And I'll tell you one thing out there before we move on to number 3. I'll tell you one thing. Get out of the insurance mindset. The insurance reimbursement model is broken. It will not allow you to make the kind of money that you should be making. And I'm not saying we built patients. I'm just saying you provide a great service, chiropractors, and you should be paid for it. You know, I saw an EOB the other day from one of our clients, and a 98941 by one of the insurance companies, they're getting paid $14. I'm sorry, stop billing insurance when it's like that. And if you want to understand a better way and a direction moving forward towards a cash practice, we practically invented it. So give CATS Consultants a call.
And I have a bigger problem with insurance as well. The other problem is that it is built to make you look like a horrible person that overutilizes care when you put patients on a treatment schedule that may be real similar to what a physical therapist would do with a patient. And all of a sudden you're overutilizing, which is absolutely ridiculous. Did the human body change in the way it heals when I work with the patient as opposed to anyone else? No. So it is built to make you look bad and it's built to underpay you. So anyway, there's our rant on insurance, right?
We could go another hour on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's number 3. Number 3. Doctor, I don't feel like I need to come in as often as you're recommending. We've all heard that. Why? What? I didn't expect to be coming in for the next 3 months. I didn't expect 3 times a week starting out or 4 times a week. And patients will want to try to reduce their frequency of care because they don't understand that consistency matters. And so this is part of, again, goes back to our good report of findings. It's part of our report of findings to explain to them why the repetition with braces. Why do I have to go in every week and get them tightened down? Well, nothing will happen if you don't do that. So we have to make sure that we're explaining those kind of things.
And I do it really simply. I repeat several times, time and repetition, time and repetition, time and repetition. When we go in and put motion in your joints, what are they going to do? They accept that motion, right? But then what's your body want to do? Oh, let's go back to that defensive position. And it is going to consistently do that until it decides, in other words, think like the brain would think, until it decides it's safe to do something else. And it takes time and repetition to create that safety for your body to then fully mobilize. It's really simple from that standpoint.
It is.
With time and repetition, we're going to get your body to actually rethink the way that it affects that joint. So we've got to put that physiological explanation, your adaptation, your remodeling through the area.
Yeah.
And
it's the time and repetition that got you here.
Yeah. If you don't, it feels like basically, well, I'm going to leave here and I feel like he just needs to treat me 2 or 3 times to get me out of pain. And the rest of it's optional, not necessary. So you miss the whole point if a patient leaves your office feeling like that.
And I love how you present the time and consistency, because that truly plays into, we all know this. I said it a few minutes ago, that plays into one of the major primary physiological laws out there, and that's Wolff's Law.
Mhm.
Abnormal pressure on normal tissue will cause it to remodel. And
Yeah.
to me, that's the best explanation of chiropractic ever, because that's what we're trying to unwind
Mhm.
is the time and consistency of riding that motorcycle over and over, for example. We're trying to unwind that.
Yeah.
And we got to work together so we have the time and consistency to undo it. So, if you've got patients saying this to you, I don't feel like I need to come in that often, or why do I need to come in that often, or I didn't expect to come in that often. And you'll see it several places in your stats if you're paying attention. You'll see your patient visit average drop. You'll see your dollar visit average drop because you won't be billing as many services.
Mhm.
There's a big difference between billing 3 times a week for 4 weeks. That's 12 visits. I'll do the math for you. As opposed to 2 times a week for 4 weeks. That's only 8. That's a difference of 4 visits. Your dollar visit average is going to go down. Your collection visit average is going to go down. You're going to plateau your practice unintentionally, without intention.
Without
All right.
intention.
Without intention.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to number 4. I feel like just another number. Doc, your practice is so busy. It seems so crowded all the time. And I just feel like you just herd people in and herd people out. And I know you and I both have heard this before.
Oh, yeah.
You got to explain the process of what's happening in your clinic to patients. It's not just the care plan. You've got to introduce them, as I always put it, you have to introduce them to your practice, because their perception may be that, you should only be seeing one patient an hour. Of course, we'd all starve if we did that.
Right.
And they may not be expecting that you see a patient every 4 minutes, but we have to explain to them that chiropractic adjustments are not necessarily a long process.
Mhm.
Some patients need longer. I get that. I'm not saying you can see everybody in 4 minutes, but
Right.
you've got to make sure that part of your communication strategy with the patient is to do that introduction to the office. Why is it busy? We're busy because we see a lot of patients with your condition.
It's exactly right. And the easiest way when I work with patients is, again, goes back to report of findings. Here's how this is going to work. Now, the first time I saw you, we spent 15 minutes with you, 30 minutes, whatever your new patient slot is, right? We spent time with you to find out what was going on, what we need to do, how we were going to do it, and kind of explain all that to you. Now, when we go into the adjustment time, it doesn't take long to apply an adjustment. You're going to be with me 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it takes for me to adjust you. And quite frankly, we've heard in the past, sometimes in our practice, oh my gosh, you don't spend very much time with me when you adjust me. It's kind of like when you're making cupcakes. Once you pour the batter into the pan and it's ready to go in the oven, it doesn't really help it to stir it more. So when I go work with the patient, I'm going to adjust you and get you moved on. And I can assure you that I spend about the same amount of time with my wife and kids when I adjust them. It takes 3 to 4 minutes to get somebody adjusted. So as I work with you, the expectation, unless you have a new problem that we need to take a look at, or you're having a significant problem with what we are working on and you need a little bit more time, you're just going to let the front desk know we're going to schedule more time for you.
Yep.
Or we're going to schedule time for an exam on a new problem that you come in with. Otherwise, when you come in, you're going to come in during normal adjusting hours, and it's going to take just a few minutes to get you adjusted and moved on to whatever specific therapy we may have recommended for you.
Yep.
Really easy explanation.
Yep.
Now you don't have to worry about the patient wondering what's going on. They then don't feel like a number. They just realize that they're there to get an adjustment.
And I always told my patients, chiropractic care, the actual care is kind of like a racetrack. If you think about a racetrack, it has the straightaways and it has the turns. And we're going to fly down that straightaway for about 6 treatments. And then when we hit the turn, we're going to slow down just a little bit. So every 6th visit, we're going to do a progress exam. And that's where we're hitting that curve. We're slowing down just a little bit. We're turning the corner into the next phase of care, unless you're not progressing like we think you should.
Right.
And those simple analogies, I think, just really help people kind of mentally visualize how your care recommendations work. And, you know, another thing to not make patients feel like they're just a number in the practice is to get them engaged in the practice. Hi, Bob. Good to see you today when they walk in the door. Call them by name. And this is a team sport. Your staff should be doing this as much or more than you doctors in this regard. They should be engaging the patient to make them feel like they're at home. All right. Anything else on that one, Trey?
I think we're good on that one. I mean, and we could talk longer about staff engagement and all that, but that's a whole different podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
I mean, that's kind of one of those, when you said it, I went, I'm going to pause right there because we can go on forever on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it really is an experience when a patient comes into the office. So
it needs to be.
We can talk about patient experience later, but just know that your staff is involved in this as well.
Yep.
And it really makes a difference when you welcome a patient into your practice.
Huge.
And they know what's going to happen when they get there.
Yep, exactly. Okay, let's hit number 5. Oh, wait a minute. We got to take a break.
Let's take a break.
I'm going to tease you on number 5. Quick word from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Patient numbers dipping, staff overwhelmed, and another marketing idea promising the world but delivering nothing. These pressures feel familiar to nearly every chiropractic clinic today. Across the country, chiropractors work hard, yet many find themselves stuck, balancing patient care with the nonstop demands of running a business. That's where the real strain begins. Most clinics face the same set of hurdles: inconsistent new patient flow, operational bottlenecks, and the constant challenge of staying visible in an overcrowded digital space. National reports show that over 60% of clinics struggle with scheduling efficiency alone, and even more lack a clear marketing strategy that reliably converts. But the good news? These challenges aren't roadblocks, they're signals. With the right procedures, smarter outreach, and guidance built specifically for chiropractic practices, clinics can turn daily stress into sustainable growth. Stronger clinics start with smarter strategies. Grow your practice with confidence. Book your strategy session with CATS Consultants.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the KC CHIROpulse Podcast. We are talking about the top 5 excuses, complaints that patients have and why they use these sometimes to leave your practice. We've already been through 4 of these. Number 5, I started feeling better, doc, so I thought we were done, so I stopped coming in. I started feeling better. That is nails on a chalkboard. You ever hear that? And again, that excuse, that complaint falls on our shoulders because that's a patient that somehow fell through the cracks and we didn't explain the process of care enough, and they got fixated in their mind on pain instead of riding that motorcycle with their kid.
That's exactly the way that it goes too. As the patient walks in, they've lost sight of what you're doing. So there is reported findings, but let's talk about what we do after the reported findings. Do we talk every time about how's the weather? I saw it rained outside last night. We can talk about those things. It's okay to make small talk while you're adjusting a patient, but let's talk about as well where we're at in your care plan. Okay, so your pain level right now is, you started out at an 8 out of 10, and now you're down to a 2 out of 10. Fantastic. We're really starting to get ready to move into more of what we would call that corrective phase at this point, not just relief care anymore, because we've about got you out of pain. Now we're really going to make leaps and bounds on trying to get the motion of the joint back to a more normal level or a more normal function at this point. And so we're looking at the long term with you. And the next step beyond that, Bob, is going to be when we have a cadence of care where we just periodically adjust you to maintain function. So right now we're still working on your problem, but it's going to be below the surface. Now we've really done a great job of getting you there. So you notice that we framed it in a way that, hey, we've done our job. We have done our job, and we did it really well. We're actually a magician at how quickly we got you out of pain. The next step is to continue that correction. And I'm talking about that while I'm adjusting him. So I don't really have to have a separate time. What I have to do is I have to quit talking about the weather long enough to address that with the patient, and then accept any objections that they give me at that point. Oh, but doc, I thought I was just coming in here for a few visits. Well, I did a bad job when I explained the care plan to you then. I'll say that if somebody says that to me, I did a really horrible job.
Yeah.
Let's stop. And then
I really messed you up with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get off schedule for a couple of minutes because of that, but it's okay because it's important that patient understands how important their treatment schedule is. So if I treat it like it's important, I relay that to the patient like it's important, and I own the fact that I didn't do a great job in the report of findings. Now we're good to go. And in a lot of cases, the patient goes, "Oh, I didn't realize that." Okay. Or they didn't hear it because they were in significant pain. That happens more often than you know, that they focus so much on, am I going to feel better? And how soon am I going to feel better? They forget everything else you said.
And that's why that first progress exam fairly early in care is so important, because especially if the patient was in a lot of pain, like you said, we've got to have that opportunity to show them the progress, but also remind them what care is actually all about. And it's not about the pain. Feeling better is just one of the first early steps. And once you get feeling better, now we can get to function, get your function better. Now we can get you back on the motorcycle. And then the wellness phase is the piece de resistance, if you will, of, that was a little French for you,
Yeah.
of chiropractic care, because that's what's going to keep you functional for the long haul. So we've got to set those expectations with patients.
We do. And I'm going to tell you, don't take this as you've done a bad job. You can always tweak what you're doing. Also, don't take this as, if you follow the steps that we just told you, that every single patient's going to follow through with care. There was one earlier this morning, before motorcycle guy, that I could have beat over the head with the two before multiple times, and she still wouldn't have gotten it. She was so focused on her pain level, and she was so focused on all the other things that she was doing. Well, if I stretch, it makes it feel better. If I do this, literally, I had this discussion with her, and I will tell you guys that sometimes no matter what you do, you're going to have a failure. I told the gal, you know what? And we were kind of spreading the care out at this point. I was trying to get her to a maintenance level. She went through relief and corrective care fine. She was balking on maintenance. And I said, I'm going to see you in 3 weeks. We'll adjust you. We'll do some needling again at that point. And I walked out of the room hoping that that would stick, because quite frankly, there was nothing else that I could do. And I heard her as I walked out of the room. That's not what I'm going to do. What I will do is I will call you. And I went, and that's the point. Sometimes you just have to put your hands up in the air and go, I did everything that I could do. Did I miss anything? Maybe, but I can't think of anything. When I went back through and looked at it, I went back through and went, is there anything that I did wrong? Is there anything that I missed? Did I not dot an I across the T? I felt like I handled that one like a champion, and I still got that response. Now, do I get that often? No. But when I do, it still makes me take pause. So we should take pause, but we should know that we're dealing with human individuals, and every once in a while, they're going to make a decision. And it could be that they made that decision because they've got a spouse that's got cancer at home, and that's their primary focus. Or they've got a job that is just running them ragged, but yet they're worried about losing their job. There are personal things that happen that affect.
You'll never have 100% retention ever.
No.
But if your dropouts are more than 13%, and don't just count new patient dropouts. A dropout is anybody from the first day of care to 20 plus years in care. If they've dropped out, they've dropped out. It's not just if they started this month. So count your dropouts correctly. And if it's more than 13%, I'm going to tell you, you got a problem in your practice, and you need to be calling us, because we can help you fix that problem. And it's probably somewhere in one of these 5 complaints that we just talked about.
Yep. That is so true.
I think we beat this horse to death. So don't accept complaints in your practice that are driving patients away. Let's fix these problems. So if you need help with these kind of things, give us a call. Go to katzconsultants.com. Our phone number is on there. You can contact us or our website. You can check out all the free downloads and things that we have on there, and really see how we're helping doctors drive very professional and profitable practices at the same time. Troy, anything to add?
I think we're good. Just focus on that report of findings, because I think everything tied back into that if you listen closely today. All 5, and report of findings and financial report of findings that your staff should be doing. And if you don't know what that is and how your staff needs to be doing it, again, those are the things that we teach. We teach your staff as well. They're going to understand
Simple
how to do,
steps.
financial, what we call a FINROF. I love calling it that because it sounds really cool. Financial report of findings, right? So if you don't understand how to do that stuff, give us a holler. We're more than happy to help you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So from all of us here at CATS Consultants, I want to thank Chiro Health USA too for being one of our sponsors. Troy, thanks for being here today. We'll see you guys next time.
See y'all later.